Brandon, I know the phone is moving fast and furious. It's because, against all belief, beyond all conventional wisdom, Bobby Petrino is, at least for a couple weeks, the head coach of Arkansas football. You were at the press conference. You saw Petrino and Yurchek face the music. Talk about this. What are your takeaways from that? And what the heck are we going to see for the next 6 or 7 weeks in Fayetteville?
Entertainment. That's all we want, right? It's the big top. That's what they're getting here in Fayetteville. It's very hard for me to think, in my opinion, that they're going to be able to have a lot of success or even a microcosm of success. They've got 7 games remaining. 5 of those are against ranked opponents, including a road trip next week after their bye week at Tennessee, which, by the way, you guys remember they upset Tennessee last year. So that's going to be an added dimension there in Knoxville for Tennessee to really fight back. And the other 2 opponents that aren't ranked are combined 7-3 right now. And one of them looks really good, in my opinion. That's Mississippi State. The other one's Auburn, which maybe their coach is going to be on the hot seat later this season. I think in a lot of ways, they've just said, Bobby, you're the most qualified person right now to lead this program, but good luck to you. If you somehow make this into a chicken salad, we will consider you for full-time head coach, because there's no way you're going to, because this schedule is ridiculously hard. And we already seen what that defense has not been able to do against any opponent this season. I think in a lot of ways he's set up for failure, but that's what's going to make it entertaining, because if he doesn't completely fall flat on his face, it's going to have some boosters there going, hey, maybe we should push him a little bit more. So stay tuned.
Chris, we'll talk about coordinator changes in a second at both Arkansas and Oklahoma State. But Arkansas, Bobby Petrino did make 3, I believe, defensive changes to the defensive staff, including defensive coordinator Travis Williams, the architect of that game plan that defeated Tennessee last year. He's out, which, give up 56 points to Notre Dame. I think we all understand how this works. But yeah, it is very interesting that Petrino got rid of Williams, given Williams was one of his former players at both Auburn and with the Atlanta Falcons. There's some familiarity there. What I think is fascinating about this whole deal is how Bobby got his way into this role. I think when they hired him from the jump, before the 2023 season, there were people that thought it was going to happen that year. I thought it was going to happen that year, that he was going to end up in the job, but it didn't. And we headed into this season. I thought all was frankly going to be kind of calm on the Western Front. I thought they would make it to the end of this season before either Sam retired or kind of transitioned to a new role in the athletic department or something like that, and they would do a full clean house. What I think is interesting now is how they've done this kind of halfway point, Brandon. And right now, Hunter Yurchek has made clear, both in comments yesterday in the press conference and in comments over the last couple of weeks, like they've got a lot of things that they've got to get situated to get the house in order, just as an athletic department, for the next coach, whether it's Bobby Petrino or whether it's Brandon Marcello.
Yeah, there's a lot they've got to do. I know some things have been in motion just as far as the financial component of all this for several weeks, not necessarily as far as maybe a potential coaching change, but just the NIL situation there. They've been working on some things there that I can't quite report right now or yet, but I know they're working on some things. Secondly, Yurachek said yesterday at his press conference that they're going to seek out and solicit some search firms so they can start speaking to intermediaries to just gauge interest. And because a lot of the coaches and even some of their agents, for that matter, which is kind of ridiculous to think, aren't even really willing to start talking about that. But they feel like they're going to have an avenue here where they think that they're going to be able to get a head start and at least know, okay, these 2 or 3 guys maybe aren't really going to be interested anyway. They're going to throw hypotheticals at them, right? They're going to go, not just, are you interested in the job, but if this job's open and the Florida job's open and this other job's open and you're a candidate for that, would you still be interested in us? So they're doing all their homework with that over here the next month or so before they start moving down the road. They also said they're going to be willing to pay. And they were paying Sam Pittman, I believe, north of $6 million. So it's going to be more expensive than that if they get the right guy. I also heard something interesting that the NIL situation was actually better at Arkansas this year than it was the previous year. Back in 2024, I heard it was $8 million for their roster in NIL, which isn't very good. It's about average when you look at across the FBS, let alone the SEC. But I was told it actually was a little bit higher this year. Juracek took some issue, and I asked him, several others did, about how are you going to improve your NIL situation? Because of his comments a few weeks ago, if you remember, saying that Arkansas is not built to win a national championship financially. We're not set up to do that. He's tried to clarify all that recently.
Maybe don't say that.
Don't say it. Yeah, I mean, don't say the quiet part out loud. Don't tell the truth. I know reporters want you to tell the truth, but don't tell your fan base that. But he did say that he admitted, he goes, Sam Pittman did not have the resources to be competitive in the SEC. So, immediately you go, so why do you fire him? Give him more money or something like that. You're saying you didn't set him up for success. So they said the next coach will be. What does that look like? I don't know, but they better have a plan together to get interest in this job. And there is interest in it. It's an SEC job, but it's an SEC job where, are they ever going to get the SEC championship game again like they did in the early 2000s, mid 2000s? Things can happen. Times change, but man, it's been kind of downward since then, other than that one little flash in the pan with back in the late 2000s or early 2010s, I should say.
And I will say, like, to Brandon's point about NIL, and obviously we do need to stipulate that NIL is different from rev share, and I don't think many schools are really quite sure what their NIL situation is going to look like going forward. The word NIL gets thrown out interchangeably with rev share. They're different. Most schools are going to be around $14 million in rev share no matter what. It's just how much you can add on top when you're talking about the resources. But Arkansas was a school that pretty consistently had its really good players poached in the portal. Maybe not all of them. Like, they were able to retain core pieces of the roster, but that is a roster that lost key pieces every offseason. And that makes it very hard for your head coach to be competitive in a league like the SEC where everybody's keeping their talent in place. So Arkansas does need to figure out a way to invest more in that roster and to give the next head coach the pieces. I do always find it amusing that instead of giving the current head coach the opportunity to fix his situation by actually giving him the resources, they usually just want to find a new toy out there to play with. But that's just the reality of life and the reality of boosters out there.
Yeah.
So.
In the NIL Go situation, Juracek even said, this is what was interesting to me. He said that the average pay for players through NIL Go at Arkansas this fall was $15,000, which if you multiply that by 105 people, that's only $1.5 million. But he said, that's pretty good considering everything. And I'm just like, that's not great. I mean, $1.5 million for your quarterback would be fine, but.
Well, no, Brandon. NIL Go is specifically going to be the outside deals.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. But other rosters are paying more money through NIL Go still.
I mean,
Are you sure about that? You sure about that?
Yes, there are some larger numbers out there, but I think right now is a very tenuous situation in college football in terms of how much even the largest schools they think can raise outside of that rev share pool. It helps if you have an Arch Manning who can get $500,000. This is just a random number. I'm not reporting that Arch Manning got $500,000 from Warby Parker, but like that number can balloon significantly if you have a star player who can command actual dollars. But the actual NIL dollars that are coming from your local car dealership as they donate $25,000, I think those are a little harder to come by right now than most people think, and it's going to make this transfer cycle particularly interesting because I think it's a little unclear how much, if at all, salaries can go up, and they might go down compared to this past season.
I almost asked a question that I should ask off the air. This might be a topic for later after I compare some notes with you guys about NIL Go. I had a fascinating conversation with someone. I said earlier this week, it was this weekend, about what's going on there. We'll talk about this off air, and it might be a topic later on a later show. But
I love that.
It's interesting out there.
Banking content for later. What I think is interesting about Arkansas structure right now, I was talking to a guy who's kind of trying to get in on the GM space, just about the landscape of the open jobs. And he brought up the fact that it's just a little unclear, the personnel staffing component to this. Arkansas has Remy Cofield, who is actually a very unique GM in that he is the GM of both the basketball program and the football program, which is somewhat unheard of, at least at the top level SEC echelon programs. And it was just like well, how's this going to work? Am I actually going to be under the new head coach? Am I going to be under Cofield, who's a basketball guy? He comes from the Boston Celtics. There's some interesting stuff about how this is structured. John Talty has joined the program. I want to bring him in really quick on this Arkansas discussion because both John and Brandon, I should say, we've talked about this in the last couple of days. Just how much money Arkansas has, John, in sort of its donor base, or at least the big swinging donors that you can think of and that you can name and that are front facing, and just how much of it's not actually going to Arkansas athletics or specifically Arkansas football, John.
Yeah, I'll talked to somebody about this recently, and I'll give you this. I'll read this quote real fast. Someone plugged into the Arkansas situation. I think you would be amazed how much all those people don't give to anything, to any athletic endeavor. Everybody assumes you've got Walmart, JB Hunt, they give, don't get me wrong, but you'd be amazed at what they don't give. So I think that there's this perception, and Brandon knows it super well. Like there's a perception like, oh, we've got Walmart money. It's like, there's some Walmart money, but it's not Phil Knight Nike money. Like there's a lot of money in the state of Arkansas, but it has not flown to athletics quite the way that you'd expect. And I jumped in late, so you guys might have already talked about this, and Brandon knows it well. But like some of the biggest money goes to basketball too, and not football, and that's been a challenge in the past. So I think that it swings both ways. I think there was a time where people thought Arkansas might not be a good job, like it's in a tough location, maybe not the best recruiting base, but then it'd flip it. They got a lot of money, and now it's kind of flipping the other way. It's like it's maybe not quite as much money as you thought, and certainly I think Hunter Yurachek tapped into that. And I think you're hoping that maybe not hitting rock bottom, but Notre Dame was pretty bad, but that maybe a result like that will spur these people on to believe, all right, we got to start giving more if we want to avoid results like this moving forward.
There are certain candidates out there that some of these boosters or would-be boosters, as we could probably better call them right now, that really like. And if Arkansas can show that they're going to go after them potentially and then show interest, I think that would open up the pocketbook for a couple of these guys that have been mentioned already. But you're right. Like the Waltons, for example, I mean, they've given, I mean, I don't know the exact figures, but they've given probably, I'm guessing my opinion, I think they maybe have given more money to Missouri than Arkansas in recent years, to be quite honest. And that's just the family dynamic changes. People age out, younger kids come up. But Coach Cal has tapped into that. I mean, he had the president of Walmart come to a practice, and like they filmed it and made a big deal of it. Like there's someone from Walmart here. They do exist. They don't just put their logos everywhere. But you're exactly right. That the other thing is, it's like basketball gets a lot of money, yes, for their roster, but so does baseball. They're big into baseball at Arkansas. I mean, that's the one program they're like, we got to win a national championship. We got to win a national championship. And they put,
and by the way, just Brandon, that's like $10 million. If you want to be a serious baseball program all in, like it's not nothing.
Yeah. It's a lot of money, and they put a lot into that, and obviously a lot in basketball. So they're trying to figure out how to do that with football. And I think it's as simple as they've got to galvanize the support with the right type of coach, because Pittman just wasn't it. I know Pittman sold himself on understanding Arkansas and all that, but then I'd hear people going, no, he doesn't. It was always this weird disconnect. It was almost like they didn't quite believe him, even though he was being truthful, but I don't think he quite did get it. I mean, you have to be ingrained in the culture at Arkansas and understand how it really is different. And you can't just say it and you understand it. You have to show it.
People will also tell you that there's some changes in Sam over the years. The guy who got the job kind of out of nowhere in the beginning, and then kind of becomes one of the fun stories of college football. He had a local attorney as his agent at the time. He drops her. He goes with a big dog. People start seeing some changes behind the scenes and him cashing in a little more. I think that turned some people off, is what I would say from some of the people that I've talked to.
Yeah, and some people I've talked to said that they felt behind the scenes at Arkansas that they felt that he felt intimidated a little bit by everything that was going on, just with, losing players left and right, trying to fix it, go in the transfer portal. You got Bobby Petrino there in the same room with you. You're working together. You're trying to figure out a plan. And then, listen, he hired Bobby Petrino to save his job. That's what he bought. That's what he was sold, right? And that's what he bought. But, if you go back and look, Petrino was brought on in a situation where he had some booster support, and there was a mediator there with one of the high-profile boosters that set it all up and helped go, hey, we can get this to work out. And it worked out for Arkansas for a year. They got the offense going, because that team could have been really bad last year. It really could have been really bad. And they somehow made a bowl game. But there's always the other side of it that, okay, it worked. What are you going to do in year 2, in year 3? And what happens if things do go south? And we're seeing that right now.
Can I ask a quick
at the end of the day, in my estimation, like, they brought the fox to the hen house here. Like, they brought Bobby Petrino in here, and whether he had to do it kind of, grinning and smiling or whatever, because I remember when that happened, I was working for a different outlet. I wrote a column about it, and I requested comment from Sam from AD Hunter Yurachek about it, and they no commented. They hid behind a letter in the loophole that Bobby Petrino used to get back in the job, because, by the way, you will recall, Bobby Petrino was fired for cause. He was not fired for the thing that you think he was fired for. He was fired for lying about it. That's why he was actually canned. The president of the university had to sign off on Bobby Petrino being rehired because he was fired for cause at the time when all of that stuff happened with the affair and the motorcycle accident, etc. So, yeah, at the end of the day, they brought the fox in the hen house. Sam brought the fox in the hen house, whether he wanted to or not, whether he had to or not, whether it saved his job at the time in the short term or not. It is, in the end, one of the things that cost him his job, because it was expeditious for Bobby Petrino to be the interim coach, and we'll see how it goes.
And it's just an interesting dynamic, too, because, as you mentioned at the top of the show, Arkansas's defensive coordinator, Travis Williams, was a linebacker for the Falcons on the day that Bobby Petrino left a note in the locker room, said, hey, I'm leaving. Bye. I'm going to Arkansas. And now they have to work together. And Bobby Petrino's practices, I remember when he was head coach at Arkansas, when I was just a young pup reporter with actual hair on my head, and he was, we're not bringing players to the ground. Everything was very offensive focused in protecting the quarterback and making the quarterback gain confidence. And a lot of those things was defense be damned. Just go figure it out. And I know that continued here, even as the OC under Sam Pittman, that they changed some things of how they would practice. And I do believe, my opinion, that negatively affected the way the defense was able to perform. Not to say they would have been great, because if you look at the roster with the guy in the portal, it wasn't great. But simple things as missing tackles, some of the effort stuff, that translates from practice, right, up into games. And I think that hurt them. I do think, though, because of the change they're making now, there's not going to be as much, kind of weird relationships going on. This defense will look better for Arkansas, but the players are the players, right? I don't know just how much better this team can look in the long run.
Chris, this is not the only coordinator shift that we saw over the weekend. Flying under the radar is that Todd Grantham is out as defensive coordinator at Oklahoma State after Oklahoma State lost to Baylor in Philip Montgomery's first run there. So you got Travis Williams out as defensive coordinator at Arkansas, Todd Grantham out as coordinator at Oklahoma State. Does history rhyme with both of these two? Is there a rhythm here, or is there something to pick out?
Yeah, well, first, Clinton Bowen taking over, former defensive coordinator at Kansas for a long time. Really, for the last 4 years, was the head coach of Lawrence High School in Kansas, basically. So he's coming back into college football for the first time in a little bit and taking over this job with Doug Meacham as the interim head coach. And Todd Grantham had
I had people there, by the way, that were surprised Meacham ended up being the interim.
I don't think there was a good interim on the staff.
Maybe so, yeah.
I think Todd Grantham, if you look at his resume.
Meacham, the interim at Oklahoma State. Philip Montgomery's the interim at Virginia Tech. Thanks, guys.
Yeah. Well, I think some people in every industry have a reputation, and Todd Grantham can be interesting to work with. We'll put it that way. And
I had
I
people in the
think-
building that
What
assumed.
do you mean by that, Chris?
Yeah, I had people in the building there assume that they thought Clint Bowen would end up being the interim.
Well, he is now the interim defensive coordinator, because I think Todd Grantham had worn out his welcome a little bit in Stillwater already in some ways, and was
He had only been there a few months.
well, you know.
There were whispers here in Arkansas like, will Bobby rehire Todd Grantham because they've worked together, and that's obviously not happening.
And well, the one thing I will say about this on the field is Todd Grantham's scheme is very complicated. Like, he asks a lot of his players. There's a lot of complicated stuff there. Talking to a couple people around that program today, I expect that defense to be considerably simplified. They brought in a ton of new players. They were asking a ton of that new defense to learn and to kind of apply on the fly. And I think you're going to see a much simplified version of that for Oklahoma State. There's still a talent deficiency there, but I think there's some optimism in that building when you make things a little easier on the players, make them think a little less, that the defensive product at Oklahoma State can turn around, and that Oklahoma State can be more competitive on that side of the ball after this change. So yeah, Todd Grantham out. We'll see what's next for him. Obviously, long decorated career, but definitely comes with a bit of a reputation on the back end of that.
The last thing I'll say about Arkansas to close us out here before we head into a break is that if Bobby Petrino gets this job, and this is something that Brandon basically said to me when we were talking on the phone over the last couple of days, like, if Bobby Petrino gets this job, like, it's because they whiffed on a bunch of guys. And it's because it's either A, that they were really successful over the next few games, or they just whiffed on a bunch of guys. And he's just sitting there. And so it's going to be really telling how this goes over the next few weeks here. And I thought it was a really, really salient point that Brendan had about that, because that's really, I remember when you told me that, I was like, oh, well, yeah, that's pretty much it.
Yeah, mid-November is kind of like what I've circled on my calendar, as far as like, that's probably when you'll start hearing actual movement. And if you start hearing names drop, who knows?
Yeah. Yeah.
Wait, can we play over under real quick? 7 games.
7 games left.
I'm gonna set it at 4.5. If he gets
Under,
over 4.5, does he get that job?
Under.
No. If he goes over 4.5, so he gets to 5, does he get that job?
I think
Yes.
that's Vegas is saying that's too high. I think you said at 3.5.
You think he can get it if he wins 4?
Depends who they are.
Yeah, it's Texas A&M, Tennessee, Arkansas, LSU, and a couple others.
If he beats Texas at Texas, do they just name him the head coach right after the game's over?
Texas and Mississippi State, yeah. It's both Texas schools and Mississippi State.
That's why their schedule is so hard.
Yeah.
And I know we're about to go to break here, but like, their schedule is so hard that if he wins 4 games, knowing also that their defense was so bad previous games and he can distance himself from it, big, hey, if we had a better defense, we would have beaten Ole Miss, would have beaten Memphis. I don't know. Get some movement there.
And they'd be bowl eligible.
John Talty talking himself into it. College football insiders found a way to make it happen. Bobby Petrino, at least for now, the head coach of Arkansas football. What a time to be alive.